Rizal in Ghent. Rizal left Brussels for Ghent on July 5, 1891. His decision to move to this university city of Belgium was prompted by two reasons according to Zaide and Zaide on 1999, which is because of the cheaper cost of printing in Ghent and the need to evade the enticing attraction of Petit Suzanne. It was in the city where Rizal met Jose Alejandrino of Pampanga and Edelberto Evangelista of Manila, who were then studying engineering at the University of Ghent. Jose Alejandrino helped Jose Rizal in correcting errors in the alphabet and helped distribute copies of the manuscript, and Edelberto Evangelista was jailed because he possessed copies of two novels of Rizal. With meager financial resources on hand, Rizal was forced to live in a very cheap boarding house where Edelberto Evangelista lived, with no allowance arriving from his family in Calamba. Rizal practically had to economize on whatever little amount of money he had. He thus led a life of near starvation in the city of Ghent. The publication of the FILIBUSTERISMO. After settling in Ghent, Rizal searched for a printing house which could offer him the lowest quotation for the printing of the Feli. Fortunately, he found the founder Mayor van Loo Press willing to publish his novel on installment basis according to Zaide and Zaide on 1999. In order to defray the initial payment of the printing of the Feli, Rizal had to pawn his jewels. For the printing to continue, he needed cash. Thus, he became very desperate, thinking that the novel will not come off the press, as funds he expected from friends did not arrive. He therefore decided to suspend its printing, until his friend Valentin Ventura in Paris came to the rescue. With the financial assistance extended by Ventura, the publication of the book was completed on September 1891. Rizal shipped to Hong Kong all copies of the Ghent edition, which were smuggled into the Philippines, except those copies sent to his friends in peninsular Spain, according to Schumacher on 1997. The Reluctant Revolutionary and His Concept of Independence. The El Filibusterismo is a novel about a revolution that failed as orchestrated by Simon. Thus, in the Feli, he returned to the Philippines for the purpose of determining the Spanish regime by encouraging corruption in the government, using his wealth and influence, and by fomenting economic distress to prod people to take up arms against the government. Simon attempted twice to carry out his sinister plan. He planned to seize control of Manila with the help of the outlaws and disaffected Filipino regiment. This nonetheless failed as Simon became anesthetized upon learning that Maria Clara died at the nunnery of Santa Clara. The second plan was to blow up the venue of the wedding feast of Paulita Gomez and Juanito Pelaez through a lamp prepared by him as a gift by the Governor-General to the new couple. Rizal, through Simon, had come to realize that independence was the solution to the miseries of the people under Spanish rule. Rizal's message from the foregoing statements of Father Florentino is very lucid. If Filipinos will not be encouraged enough to protest and proclaim their rights, be willing to sacrifice and shed off their silence in the face of oppression and tyranny, then they don't deserve to be given freedom. The conversation that transpired between Father Florentino and Simon during the dying moment of Simon goes to show that Rizal was a reluctant revolutionary, according to Guerrero on 1998, while he was on the belief that assimilation is not possible and that independence was a remedy to alleviate the sufferings of the Filipinos under Spanish rule. Rizal hesitates and backs down. To Rizal's thinking, The Filipinos of his time were not ready for revolution as they were not ready for independence, according to Guerrero on 1998. They were not ready for independence as they were still unworthy to become independent. They will only be worthy of independence the moment they had learned to prioritize social good over their personal advantage and had become a nation.
Good day, everyone. I'm Meridel Kisimbahon, and our next topic is all about the comparison of Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. These two novels differed in many aspects. Noli Me Tangere is a romantic novel, a work of the art, and a book of feeling, while the El Filibusterismo is a political novel, a work of the head, and a book of the thought. Another differences between the two novels is in terms of their dedication. Jose Rizal dedicated the Noli Me Tangere to his motherland, while the El Filibusterismo was dedicated to the memory of Gomborza. And in terms of the length of the novel, the Noli Me Tangere is way more longer than El Filibusterismo because Noli Me Tangere has 64 chapters while the El Filibusterismo has 38 chapters. One common trend in both the novels, however, is the awakening of the Filipinos to the idea that they belong to one nation, to make them realize they have a motherland to love, whose welfare should be their paramount. Moreover, both novels are focused towards the seeking of reform in our society during the Spanish regime. Although both novels have many differences, but they also have similarities. Both novels aim to enlighten the Filipinos on what is happening in the country. They want the people to fight for their country and have the total freedom. Rizal advocated peaceful reforms in the Noli through Crisostomo Ibarra. On the other hand, Rizal advocated a revolution and effecting reforms in Filipino society in the Fili through Simon. Both the Fili and Noli were good novels from the point of view of history. Noli and Fili depicted the actual conditions in the Philippines during the time of Rizal. They were instrumental in awakening the spirit of Filipino nationalism, which paved the way for the outbreak of the Revolution of 1896. The message of the Fili. Rizal's message in El Filibusterismo is very clear. Rizal believed that the present system of government in the Philippines through corrupt officials dominated by the friars can lead to the downfall of Spain. Rizal was very certain because of the nature and operation of the government. Those who are intelligent, hardworking, courageous, and loyal citizens were driven into opposition. For Rizal, the Spanish colonial government was arbitrary, cruel, lacking in a sense of justice and responsibility, without interest in people under its tutelage. While Rizal described the government in a very negative way, his picture of the friars in the Fili was harsher. In this novel, Rizal painted them as abusing their power to satisfy their evil desires, to preserve their control of education, to rob men of their land, and to seek their own interests. Rizal's condemnation of the friars in the Philly and the Spanish government was harsh, but he did not spare his fellow Filipinos from his harsh critics. He condemned them for their greed, corruption, hypocrisy, and cowardice, which contributed so much to the abuses of the civil official and friars. Rizal's El Filibusterismo is a novel about a revolution that failed. In it, he warns that if Spain does not grant Filipinos their long-desired assimilation, they may eventually prefer to die rather than endure the miseries any longer.
Hello ma'am, my name is Kisha Marie Arnugal and I am the reporter of this group, titled The Synopsis of El Filibusterismo. So the novel begins on board the steamer Tabu, flying the Pasig River to the cool Laguna de Bay, with Simon Verdonia, Dayus Argreto Victoria, Don Tiburcio, Dis Espadanya, at J. Tulok near Paulita Gomez, Isagani, Father Florentino, Basilio, and other passengers. Simon arrived in the Philippines as an omnibus figure whose origin was unknown to many, but he wielded unlimited influence to the Governor-General. He was known by many as jeweler who always sported large dark spectacles that concealed much of the upper part of his face, and as much as Simon enjoyed the patronage of the Governor-General, many considered him influential in securing privileges from the country's chief executive with the access he had to the country's high government officials. Simon was able to use all the influence and power of his disposal to accumulate more fortune for himself. So nagsimula ang nobela sa kanyang pabor na Tabu, na dumadaloy sa Ilog Pasig hanggang sa Cuna, Laguna de Bay. Kasama ni Simon si Doña ang gamit ay Grito Victor Terina, Don Tiburcio de Espadanya, Edjo Lok malapit Paulita Gomez, Isagani, Father Florentino Basilio, at iba pang pasahero. So si Simon ay dumating siya sa Pilipinas na bilang isang masamang tao na ang pinagmulan ay hindi pa alam ng karamihan. Pero nagkaroon siya ng walang limitasyong impluwensya sa Gobernador General. Kilala siya ng maraming bilang isang mag-aalahas na palaging nakasuot ng madilim na salamin na nagtatago sa itaas na bahagi ng kanyang muka. Dahil nasiyan si Simon sa pagtangkilik ng Gobernador General, marami nang nagtuturing sa kanya na may impluwensya at nakakuha ng mga pribilehiyo mula sa punong tagapagtanggap ng bansa. So, nagkaroon siya ng access sa mataas na opisyal na pamahalaan na bansa na gawa ni Simon ang gamit ng lahat ng impluwensya at kapangyarihan na sa kanyang kapangyarihan upang makaipon ng higit pang kayamanan para sa kanyang sarili. Basilio, a young medical student, returned to San Diego, his native town. He was the brother of Crispin, who was beaten to death by the head sacristan. Many years ago, he had met an exhausted man who assisted him in burying his mother. Basilio Ibarra found Simon digging the grave of his mother at the spot where he was 13 years ago. So Simon thought of exterminating Basilio for fear that his identity might be revealed by the latter soon. Simon realized that he should spare Basilio, considering that he also had grievance to resolve. Meanwhile, Simon continued using his wealth and political influence to encourage corruption and other illegal activities in the government. He promoted tyranny and complete disregard for the dignity and welfare of the poor, or for them to be accustomed to the idea of death. Thus, the government became desperate and dressed up in armed agents against the government. So, mao to na pagtanto ni Simon na dapat niyang iligtas si Basilio dahil mayroon din siyang hinaing na dapat lutasin. At the same time, young Filipino students were pushing for assimilation and the spread of Spanish language. Simon reacted vehemently to this program of Hispanization that young students were advocating. For Simon, This will be death of the people, destruction of national identity, and institutionalization of tyranny. According to him, people will never speak Spanish as long as lingua franca because they can't express themselves in that language. As Simon said, as long as a people keeps its language, it keeps the pledge of its liberty, just as the man preserves his independence as long as he preserves his own way of thinking. Language is the thought of its peoples. So, hanggat ana si Simona, hanggat pinapanatili ng isang tao ang kanyang wika, pinapanatili nito ang pangako ng kalayaan nito. Kung paanong pinapanatili ng tao ang kanyang kasarinlan, hanggat pinapanatili niya ang kanyang sariling paraan ng pag-iisip. Ang wika ay ang pag-iisip ng mamayan nito. So, Simon asks Basilio to join him in mobilizing the youth of work of equality of rights, brotherhood, and representation in the Spanish Cortes. Basilio was of the belief that the redemption of the country rests not on political revolution but on devotion to science. For Basilio, his only hope was to utilize his studies to alleviate the suffering of his Filipino fellows. Simon failed to get Basilio's commitment but left the door open for Basilio should he change his mind. Simon encouraged the Governor-General to order the demolition of all nipa houses for a substantial bribe for a businessman. He tried to win the support of the army officers by paying their debts. This in effect made him win the loyalty of these officers, such that they were ready to start a mutiny at his command. To ensure that the army officers would support, he made it appear that the revolution was backed up by the friars to strengthen their positions and that it was planned by the Governor-General to prolong his tenure of office in the country. And Simon convinced Basilio to support the revolution that was to break out within an hour. Basilio was to take a group of men to destroy the gates of the convent of When Basilio informed Rizal of the demise of Maria Clara, Simon became dumbfounded. For the time being, the project of the young students to establish an academy for the teaching of the Spanish language was rejected by the administrators of the university. Despite the all-out support of Father Fernandez, the student therefore sought the assistance of Don Custodio Aposado, liberal official counselor, to satisfy the friars and the wishes of Pepay, his favorite dancer, whose support was enlisted by the student. Don Custodio recommended that the project be approved under the direction of the university friars. The next day, anti-friars posters were posted at the door of the university. What followed was the arrest of the members of the student association, including Basilio. Eventually, all were released from prison except Basilio, who was jailed for a number of months to uphold prestige of the authority. So the Spanish authorities learned that Simon was hiding in the house of Father Florentino, a retired Filipino priest. Simon took poison before he would be arrested by the Guardia Civil. Before he died, Simon divulged his secret to the kind-hearted priest. As Simon dies, Father Florentino murmurs, Where are the youths who are to consecrate their budding years, their idealism and enthusiasm to the good of their country? Where are they who are to pour out their blood generously to wash away so much shame, so many crimes and dominations pure and immaculate must the victim be so that the Holocaust may be acceptable? Where are you, O youth, who are to embody in yourself the vigor of life which has been drained from our veins, the purity of ideas which has been stained in our minds, the fire of enthusiasm which has been quenched in our hearts? We await you, O youth. Come, for we await you. So that was Father Florentino murmurs. Father Florentino gazed at the lifeless body of Simon and took the treasure chest and threw it to the sea. As the chest sank into the sea, he said, "May nature guard you in her deep abysses, among the pearls and coral of her eternal seas. When for some holy and sublime purpose man may need you. God wills his wisdom draw you from the bosom of the waves. Meanwhile, there you will not work woe, you will not distort justice, you will not foment avarice." So, moto ang giingon ni Father Florentino sa walang buhay na katawan ni Simon. That's all.
Symbolical interpretation of the Phili. On the more abstract or philosophical level, the following thesis that the Phili is a study in revolution, the more important characters can be interpreted symbolically. Here, in symbolical interpretation, each character in the novel has its own symbol that represents them. Simon represents the revolutionaries during the time who supported the idea of holding bloody revolt against the Spanish government. Maria Clara, who after suffering from untold physical and spiritual abuse for at least 13 years, at last dies, can still be made to symbolize in the Fili, the friar-dominated culture, which is now ripe for revolution. A term used to represent being an ideal woman, a gentle and religious character. Senor Pasta, the idealist third mercenary, could be made to represent that portion of Filipino society who have abandoned their noble social ideals and have become thoroughly self-seeking opportunists, serving only the interests of those who have hired them. He is a lawyer who also works as a consultant for the friars. He thinks only of himself and is willing to be nationalistic only after everyone else becomes patriotic first. Isagani, a young student who is inspired by high ideals for his country but at critical moment apparently and unwittingly forgets those ideals for selfish reasons. Because of the reason, became the result of the symbol of unreliable idealism on the part of the educated Filipino youth at the time. Pauleta Gomez, a girl who is more free from the fetters of convention than Maria Clara, can be made to represent the portion of Filipino womanhood still half-breed like Maria Clara. She is a caricature of a woman who chooses the best option for a more stable future. She knows what is best for her and would take advantage of her admirers to get what she wants. Basilio, the medical student who, despite the extreme of sufferings undergone by his family as a result of clerical perfidy and cruelty, refuses to entertain any revolution, though even in the face of rampant social injustices, could be made to symbolize that segment of the educated Filipino society which has been so brutalized that it has become insensible to the social welfare. Placido Penitente, a young man who has been so disillusioned by the state of affairs he finds himself in as a student, entertains the desire to go abroad. He is the most admirable character in Filibusterismo. A character remained hidden but gave efficient contribution in the steering of Filipinos revolution. Don Custodio, who occupies several positions despite the absence of qualification, believes that any idea that does not come from him deserves no consideration. He is a Spanish official in the country, as one who finds pleasure in developing a feeling of inferiority among the people. Kabisang Talis, victim of land grabbing by the friars, became desperate and joined the outlaws for personal revenge. He symbolizes the natives and farmers whose lands were seized by the friars. His story represents the cost of revolution. Julie, innocent-looking and unaffected daughter of Kabisang Talis and sweetheart of Basilio, the woman that committed suicide because of a person that was not deserving of her innocence. The schoolmaster, rusticated as a rebel for having experimented teaching the Spanish language to young children.